All right, everyone, get ready for a deep dive. Today we're going into Miranda July's world, her latest novel, All Fours. We've got this super in-depth book review, and we're going to totally dissect it. Figure out what July's doing with this story. The themes, the symbolism, the good stuff and the not so good stuff, the whole thing. This one's for you if you're already a fan of Miranda July's work. Or even if you're just, curious about her. She's definitely unconventional and makes you think.
Yeah, and what's really interesting about Miranda July is that she's not just a writer. She's like this multi-talented artist, a filmmaker, a
Yeah.
performer. And it seems like all those creative things she does, they all kind of blend together to make her storytelling so unique.
Totally. And this book sounds like a real trip. Literally a trip. Okay, so from what I'm getting from the review, it's about this middle-aged woman who just ditches her everyday life and goes on this totally impulsive road trip. But it's not just about, sightseeing and stuff. It becomes this deep dive into self-discovery. That impulsive road trip part, it really got to me. It makes you think, how often do we actually let ourselves have that kind of freedom? July seems to be tapping into this longing we all have to break free from all those expectations and rediscover who we really are.
And that journey of self-discovery, it's all mixed up with this exploration of female sexuality and desire. And, all that in middle age. It's a theme you don't see a lot in mainstream literature, but in All Fours, it seems like it's front and center.
For sure, and the review talks about how the journey becomes all erotically charged. So let's dive into some of the key themes and symbols here. One that jumps out right away is desire and reinvention. I mean, come on, this woman just takes off on a road trip. That says a lot about that universal desire we have. To break free and redefine ourselves, it's like she's saying, forget about what everyone expects. I'm going to figure out who I am on my own terms.
That's so true. And it's interesting because that desire and reinvention theme, it's also really closely connected to the theme of surreal encounters.
Hmm.
And Miranda July, she loves to put those dreamlike surreal elements into her
Yeah,
story.
totally classic Miranda July. I'm curious, though, what do you think those surreal encounters actually represent in the story?
Hmm, that's a good question. I think those surreal encounters, they're like a way for July to go deep into the protagonist's inner world, maybe even her subconscious desires and anxieties, like all those hidden parts of herself she's starting to uncover on this journey.
Now that you mention it, the review does highlight how the book might, challenge those conventional views on midlife and female sexuality. It seems like July's pushing boundaries, starting those conversations that we need to be having.
Absolutely. And it makes you wonder how much of All Fours is fiction and how much might be from July's own experiences.
Hmm.
The reviewer mentions the book has this deeply personal and vulnerable tone.
Yeah.
Makes you think if she's blurring those lines on purpose.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Okay, so the review, it praises the book for the way it tells the story, unconventional for sure, and it dives into female sexuality and identity. Raw exploration, they call it. Sounds like July's doing something really unique here. What are your thoughts on that?
What I find striking is just how raw July's exploration of female sexuality is, especially, in middle age. It's not just about desire. It's about reclaiming agency, challenging all the societal expectations. It's not something you see portrayed so honestly very often, especially for women at this point in their lives.
Totally. And I think that's what makes this book so compelling. It's not just a story, it's this exploration of those universal longings we all have: freedom, self discovery, connection, that kind of thing. But it's all told through this lens that's so uniquely Miranda July.
Yeah, it's really cool to see a book that's not afraid to go there, all those complexities of female desire and how it challenges all those societal norms.
Yeah.
But the review did mention this book might not be for everyone. What did they say about that?
Right. They pointed out how the storytelling is kind of abstract and surreal, and that can be a bit jarring for some readers. And then there are the explicit sexual themes that might not be, everyone's cup of tea. But honestly, I think those elements are actually part of what makes July's work so distinctive. She's not afraid to push those boundaries and,
Yeah.
maybe even make readers feel a little uncomfortable. Isn't that part of what art is supposed to do sometimes?
I totally agree. It's like those unexpected things.
Yeah.
And the themes that challenge you, that's what makes you think differently and maybe see the world in a whole new light.
Yeah.
Exactly. And speaking of seeing the world in a new light, one thing that really stood out to me in the review was, how July uses surrealism. It's not just there for shock value. It actually serves a purpose in the story.
Oh, for sure. I was kind of wondering if we could dig into that a little more. How does she actually use surrealism, to make the story better? What's it doing in All Fours?
Well, think about surrealism as this way to get into the subconscious, a way to express the things you can't really explain, like when you have a dream. That feels so real, so vivid, but it just doesn't make sense. That's what July's doing. She takes those dreamlike elements and weaves them into, well, reality. It's this world that's both familiar and kind of unsettling at the same time.
Right. It's like she's giving us a peek into the protagonist's, inner world, all those thoughts and emotions that we don't usually see. And by doing that, she's also saying something about the limitations of language. Like sometimes words just aren't enough to express the whole human experience, especially with something as complex as desire.
Yeah, you got it. Surrealism lets July explore those topics that are kind of taboo and all those emotions we don't like to talk about. It's a way to break free from like normal storytelling and just get into the messy, complicated reality of being human.
And in this case, that messy reality includes female sexuality and desire, especially in middle age, which is so often ignored or totally misrepresented in the media and stuff.
Exactly. Think about how often you see women of that age portrayed as like sexless or desperate. It's so refreshing to see a book that embraces, all of female sexuality, even the wrinkles.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of embracing the full spectrum, the review mentioned this list of similar books
Yeah.
and recommendations might be a great starting point for people who want to explore these themes more.
Absolutely. It's a list of authors known for their, well, unconventional storytelling.
Yeah.
And their willingness to just go for it with those taboo subjects.
Sounds like the perfect reading list for anyone who wants to dive into this kind of genre and explore contemporary literature that really pushes the boundaries. It's like with this book, Miranda July is giving us permission to be okay with exploring those parts of ourselves. The ones we usually hide. Maybe we're even a little afraid of them.
Totally. And that kind of brings us to this big question. What if you could just take off
Yeah.
on your own impulsive journey of self-discovery? I mean, where would you go? And what parts of yourself would you want to, explore? Or maybe even redefine completely? It's a pretty deep question, don't you think?
It really is. We spend so much of our lives, trying to fit in, trying to be what other people expect, conforming to all those rules and norms. What if we just said, forget it? What happens then? What do we find out about ourselves when we let go of all that pressure? I think that's what July is getting at in this book. It's like an invitation to just break free and rediscover who we are at our core.
Right. She's basically saying, don't be afraid. Shed that old skin. Embrace the unknown. Like, you might be surprised by what you find.
And that journey, it doesn't have to be a literal road trip. It can be an internal thing, like a journey you take inside yourself. Exploration, introspection. It could even be something like taking up a new hobby, something creative, or rethinking a relationship, or even just letting yourself question those beliefs you've always held, the ones that might be holding you back.
Yeah. It's about giving yourself permission to change, to grow, to embrace the parts of yourself that you've been hiding.
So think about it. If you could go on your own personal journey, a self-discovery trip, what would it be like? What would you want to explore or redefine? Maybe there's a passion you've always had, but you've kept it hidden. Or maybe there's a fear you need to overcome. Whatever it is, don't let it stay buried.
Let all fours be your, inspiration. Let it remind you it's never too late to break free from those limitations, the ones you put on yourself, and embrace who you truly are.
That's a great way to put it. And to everyone listening, we'd love to hear from you. Where would your journey take you? What would you discover? Share your thoughts with us. On social media, talk about it with a friend. Or just let it sit with you for a while. Sometimes the biggest journeys, they start with a single question.
And don't forget, it's not always about the destination. It's about the journey. Enjoy the detours, the surprises, even the challenges. That's how we grow.
Thanks for coming along with us on this deep dive into the world of Miranda July. Hope you found it interesting, thought-provoking, and maybe even a little bit inspiring. Until next time, keep exploring, keep asking those questions, and keep diving deep.